How you doing? My name's PC Saeed Hussain. Thank you firstly for attending today's event, being Cyber Awareness during Cyber Scotland Week. Before we start, I would like to quickly tell you a little about our role. We're part of the Cybercrime Harm Prevention Unit, as you can see on your screen, which is a national team based across Scotland. We work very closely with the Scottish Government, public, private sectors to provide up-to-date cybersecurity and online safety advice. But at the same time, we're also working hard towards Police Scotland's priority to tackle cyber-related crime. With this in mind, with the topic in mind as well, we can agree that the internet has revolutionised communications to the extent that it's now our preferred medium of everyday communication. In almost everything that we do, we use the internet. Now that may be ordering food, it could be buying something from Amazon, or even just sending a text message to family and friends via messaging. Now, a common example that I like to give is many of us remember the days when, if you ever wanted to keep up to date with the news, you'd walk down to your local shop when it was open in the morning and buy your newspaper to find out what happened the previous day. But today, a click or two itself is enough to read your local paper, but at the same time, any news source from anywhere in the world updated to the minute. Now, how do we make these purchases or view these articles? It will be either on our mobile devices. For some, it may be your iPad, laptops, but regardless of whatever device that you use, the same online safety applies across the board. Now, this is why today we'll be discussing generic online safety, which will cover topics such as your passwords, privacy settings on applications, the use of public Wi-Fi, and tips and advice to best safeguard yourself online so you're not exposed to cyber criminals. But before we delve into this, just to give you an idea, I'm going to show you what 1 second looks like on the internet. Now, what you see in front of you is an internet in a second. Now, a minute might seem like a second. When you're having a good time, family and friends, or whatever your hobbies or interests are, at the same time, a minute might seem like an eternity when you're doing exercises in the gym or anything that you can find laborious. Now, depending on a particular event, that same minute might be enough to change your life, or it might not, but it surely changes the internet scenery a lot. Now, that's a minute I'm referring to, but in front of you is what a second on the internet looks like. For instance, 40,000 Google searches per second, 6,000 tweets, 41,000 Facebook posts, 34,000 emails have been sent, and 100,000 YouTube views, and 995 Instagram photos. So that's the internet every second for you. And as you can imagine, the internet landscape is ever changing. Now, the internet looks tangibly different now than it did since we started this presentation today. Now, think about how much personal and sometimes private data we have online, which is fine, but how exactly do we protect that information is what's key, and it's exactly what we'll be discussing throughout today's presentation. Now, when we think online safety, many of us will immediately think password. Now, that's not a bad thing, but this is why we highlight the importance of implementing a strong password, is because it's the single biggest control that you have over your own personal security. Now, what you see in front of you are the most frequently used passwords. Now, I'm not going to ask anyone to raise their hands to see if their own passwords on the screen, but instead, I want you to pay more attention to the results that were obtained from the survey, which was carried out by the NCSC, which is the National Cybersecurity Centre. They revealed that for the 5th consecutive year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the word password itself retained their top spots as the most frequently used passwords. Now, the reason why we highlighted this is because recognizing the passwords that are more likely to result in a successful account takeover is an important first step in helping people create a more secure online presence. Now, we will discuss how to create a strong password and common mistakes as the presentation progresses. However, before we discuss those topics, I'm going to show you a short clip which I include in a lot of our online safety presentations, because not only does it highlight the importance of having a secure password, but also the information that we have available online for others to see.
No, we've been hearing a lot about cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. You know, the most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on a Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th.
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 4, 6, 8. And then only 3, but it's, you know, it's, for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Now, back in video that we always tend to show in these kind of presentations, but as easy as that was in person, getting members of the public's passwords, it's much simpler and easier for hackers to do this online using their own various methods. This is why we always urge people to choose their passwords accordingly. Now, a common pattern you may have noticed when selecting passwords, they selected based on personal information, such as grandmother's name, school they graduated from, the year they graduated, and pet names, for example. Now think about where else could I find this personal information from without asking? Now, the first thing that will come to many of your minds will be your social media profiles. Well, that's how easy it is for these criminals to obtain this information. Now, what we'll do is we'll discuss exactly what makes a strong password and the advice that you should be taking on that's been presented from the NCSC. Now, following on from what we've just seen, now, what do you need to know about selecting passwords? Firstly, default passwords. Those are those that have already been set. For example, when you're setting up your Wi-Fi router, you will have your default password usually on the back of the router. Now, factory set default passwords being left unchanged is one of the most common password mistakes that we can make. Given how many of us may still be working from home just now, think about how many devices are connected to your Wi-Fi router itself. Now, this is why it's really important that this is not easily accessed, and changing the password is pretty easy to do. Therefore, please be cautious who you're allowing to access your Wi-Fi, because sometimes that is all that is required to retrieve any sensitive information. Now, the length of password. The longer you make your password, the more difficult it is to guess. You should make it as long as possible, and ideally 15 characters plus. Now, the next part, 3 random words. Now, one of the many recommendations put forward by the NCSC, again, the National Cybersecurity Centre, is to use 3 random words to create a single password. However, as you've already seen in the video, please avoid creating passwords from significant dates, like your birthday, your loved one's birthday, or from your favourite sports team, or by using family and pet names, since most of these details can be found within your social media profiles. Also, remember, if you're thinking of changing certain characters in your password, so swapping the letter O with the number 0, for example, you should know that cyber criminals know these tricks very well, so your password won't be significantly stronger, but it will only make it harder for you to remember when you try to log into your applications. Now, long-standing advice around making your passwords very complex, which suggests we should create passwords full of random characters, symbols, and numbers, and everything else that you can see on your keyboard, is not helpful. This is because most of us have lots of passwords, and memorizing lots of complex passwords is almost next to impossible. And if there's anyone here today that can do that, I'll certainly be very impressed. Now, the next part is the 2-factor authentication, which you see on your screen, which is 2FA. There may be occasions where we may take the necessary steps possible to select the strongest password we can, but yet we still fall short. Now, this is why we recommend what is known as 2-factor authentication, also known as 2FA, which makes it harder for criminals to access your online accounts, even if they know your password. Now, 2-factor authentication provides a way of, it's kind of like double checking that you really are the person you're claiming to be when you're using online services, such as your banking. It could be your email or one of the various social media platforms that you may have access to. And the reason why we recommend this is because passwords can be stolen, thus allowing criminals to access your online accounts. However, accounts with 2-factor authentication requires an extra check. So even if a criminal knows your password, they won't be able to access your accounts. Verification is available for an account. The option to switch it on is usually found in the security settings for the account. Now, please note it may also be called 2-factor authentication, 2FA, or another commonly kind of known term for it is multi-factor authentication, which again, abbreviation is MFA. An example of this being put in practice, I actually remember when recently doing a course, just last year actually, and every time I logged into the student portal, I would first receive a code on my personal mobile number, which I would then input after putting in my password, and only then I was granted access to that portal. Again, a clear demonstration of the double check element to it. So even if someone did have my password, they still wouldn't be able to get into my portal Why? Because they would first have to receive the code on their personal device, which is my personal number, and then it's only once they have that code you're granted access. Now, the next part is characters. Now, adding special characters, numbers, upper and lowercase to your random words can make it even more secure and difficult to guess. Now, different accounts is the next part. For each account, use a different password, particularly when it comes to personal information or financial information. I know it seems like an extra effort, but with a password or a passphrase manager, you can store them easily. Next being personal information, which we've already kind of talked upon based on the previous video we just seen. But as with verification security questions, when you create your passwords, avoid using any information that will help to identify you, like your name, your child's name. It could be a pet, date of birth, or anything that would be easy to find out about you from your social media accounts. The next being verification questions. You don't have to use correct information. It's up to you what you use. Be creative. Valuable personal information. You have already noticed quite a common theme here, which is don't reveal too much about yourself online, because majority of the time it's personal information that we use to set up our accounts. Now, if we have the same information available online for everyone to view, then the question is, where is the security? Now, the next part being password manager. You should have a different password for each device, application, and account, which I understand will be difficult to remember, and we don't recommend writing them down. This is why we recommend using a password or a passphrase manager to store your passwords. Some devices have a password manager built in. They can make using and generating passwords easier and more secure. Many can also automatically enter the appropriate password into websites and apps on your behalf, so you don't even have to type them in each time you log in. You may already be using a password manager without knowing it. Many are already built into your internet browser, such as your Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, or a lot of the majority kind of browsers, popular ones anyway, that you may be using on your device. You can use your browser or download an application. And you may have noticed that when you sign into an account, that a box tends to appear asking if you want your browser or device to save your password. Now, if you're not sharing your device with anyone else, then it is safe to tick that box. Whether you're using a standalone password manager or a built-in one, it's important to keep the account secure, because access to this will give access to all of your passwords. Now, one thing to be aware of is there is possibility of intrusion if your device is shared, i.e. your family iPad, for instance. So please keep this in mind when setting up. Now, one of the reasons why we tend to push your password manager element is because it does come with many benefits. The first being it helps spot fake websites, which will protect you from phishing attacks. Secondly, it'll let you know if you're using the same password across different accounts. And last but not least, it will notify you of your password if your password, appears within a known data breach, so you know if you need to change it. Now, when discussing such topics, a common question that's kind of posed to us is, what password manager would we recommend? Well, the answer is most devices do come in built in. Fortunately, we don't recommend which to use, but instead, we encourage that you conduct your own research in order to make an informed decision surrounding the best kind of platform to use. Further to what we've just discussed regarding passwords, another method we can adopt to add a further layer of security is ensuring your device password, is password or PIN protected, which will come in handy should you, God forbid, ever misplace your device on a bus or train. or if it's stolen. Now, this leads us on to the following, which is have they been pawned? Now, what you see in front of you is a website that we recommend you visit once you get a chance to see if your email's been compromised. And the second part is there that you see on your screen is this is another website which can be visited to see if your password has been compromised, which in turn lets you know if a review of your password management is required or not. Now, you may wonder, if you do find your password is one of the thousands that has been compromised, then what should you do? Well, advice taken from the NCSC published an article surrounding this and recommended one positive step to take, which is change your password to something stronger. I know it sounds simple, but sometimes taking steps such as these will be enough to prevent criminals from gaining access to your personal accounts. Now, you may also wonder if the website's legit that you see in front of you. Well, I can assure you it has been backed and recommended by NCSC themselves. Now, remember that hackers don't sit about and guess passwords themselves, but instead they have computers with algorithms that can process information in the thousands per second, which will eventually generate the correct password, hence the reason for picking strong passwords. Further, if you worry about the strength of your password, then please go to the website you see in front of you. Prior to today's presentation, actually, I put in 2 passwords to give you an idea in terms of their strength, and then took a screenshot. Now, in the middle, I put in the password 123, which is a very common password for many, which would take a criminal, as you can see, 1 month to hack. Now, after I put in the recommended 3 random words approach password being London Mountain Green, and as you can see, it says it would take the computer about 600 million years to hack. Now, I hope this will give you an idea about how important it is to develop a strong password. Now, as well as developing a strong password, another element that we wanted to talk about was updates and your privacy settings. Throughout the year, we all get notifications on our devices saying that your software's update or security updates required. But how many of us actually update at the time, and how many of us just ignore it and say, I'll get to it later on? I'm certainly one of them. I know my mum's one of them, because a lot of the time she asks me to do stuff for her on her phone. The first thing I notice straight away is all those notifications. And it's always prompts to update our device. It's been sitting for a while, and I've told her so many times, yet she still doesn't do it. So I have to sit there and go through the whole process, update a device, well, as a son should do. But the worst part is I'm really bad for it. I'm exactly the same. I'll be doing my own work and I'll just remove the notifications, thinking to myself, I'll get to it tonight at some point, and I never do, which is really bad. But you need to remember that out-of-date software, applications and operating systems contain weaknesses, which in turn makes it easier for criminals to hack. Now, this is why applying these updates promptly will help protect your devices and accounts from cyber criminals. Now, these updates will include protection from viruses and will often include improvements and new features. This is why we recommend that if you receive an update, then please don't ignore it, but apply these updates, because it is one of the most important things that you can do to keep yourself online safe. The updates itself aim to fix known flaws in products that attackers can use to compromise your devices. Now, these new security features make it harder for criminals to successfully compromise your devices, and that's why it's important you regularly review and update your device at the first opportunity that you have. Now, not everyone will have the latest mobile, iPad or laptop, but please remember, manufacturers eventually stop providing updates for older devices. So if you continue to use a device that's no longer supported, it means, firstly, you won't be able to receive updates that contain new features and performance improvements. And secondly, it won't receive the security updates from the manufacturer. And without these, your phone is less secure. Again, please don't buy the latest or the most expensive model just to stay safe, but if possible, avoid buying and using phones that are no longer supported. And you can check online to find out if a specific model still receives updates from the manufacturer. Now, another topic we wanted to kind of discuss with yourselves was permissions. Your privacy settings, it's important to understand and use the privacy settings you have available on your application. The primary function of privacy settings is to limit who can access your profile, device, and the information that others can see. For instance, adjust who can see what you post online on your social media accounts. Who is able to contact you? Who can search you by going to the settings section of whatever website or application you're using and adjusting it accordingly. If you struggle with making these amendments, then I recommend you visit the respective sites, whatever application you're trying to adjust, and take guidance from there. Because a lot of these platforms nowadays will have supporting mechanisms on their websites that will be readily available for you. Now, if you're still struggling, then please, I recommend the NCSC provide an easy-to-read guide which can walk you through these changes accordingly. It's a very easy-to-read guide, and it's a very kind of structured step-by-step. Now, one other aspect I would like you to keep in mind is that the applications you download on your devices from either the Android market or the Apple Store, please think carefully, about what you're downloading. But most importantly, what you're granting that application access to. Now, a common example that I like to give is if you download a torch, why is it wanting access to your contacts or your microphone, for instance? These are things that you need to be aware of and be vigilant to. Because the reason I say this is because without giving a second thought, we just end up clicking allow, essentially. However, we don't realise how dangerous this is until we become victims ourselves. And the only way to help prevent this is by taking these necessary steps. Now, just based on what we've discussed so far, I'm going to show you a video which highlights why it's important to adjust our privacy settings. Hopefully this should play.
Oh, hi, can I help?
Hot chocolate.
What's the name?
Joelle.
What was the name?
Alex.
Alex. There you go, Johnny.
Cheers.
If you like our Facebook page, we give you a free hot drink and a free pastry.
We have a new like for Damien. We have a new like for Damien.
Hey, Carly, are you standing by?
Standing by.
Hi there, can I help?
Yeah, I just liked your Facebook page.
Okay, I'll search Facebook
I'm
now.
searching Google.
Have a phone number.
I've got his email address.
Okay, Carly, are you ready?
For information on Damien.
Yep, I am.
Mother's maiden name is He banks with
Carly, this is the girl coming in now with the blue scarf.
What's her name?
Nicholas.
Nicholas. His date of birth, 7th of May. She lives at 38A.
Just be a couple of seconds.
2 children, age 4 and 6. Previous address. She's got the photos.
Yep, got it. Damien, age 26 and a fitness instructor.
How do you know that?
Brody, who goes to UCL. Martin, who went to South Thames College. Assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street.
How did you know?
That is... I don't understand.
Oh, better?
You know I'm a Christian as well.
Oh, yeah, we know everything about you, Martin. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Anna from Russia.
Again, absolutely brilliant video that we like to show when it comes to these kind of presentations. You've seen yourself how easy it can be for someone to gain access to your personal information when you've not adjusted your privacy settings accordingly. You need to remember that these individuals were not hackers, but only disclosed information they were able to freely obtain from the internet, i.e. their personal profiles. Hence the importance of reviewing the content that you put out in the public along with your privacy settings on your devices. Now, this takes us on to the use of public Wi-Fis. You'll know yourself or will have seen advertised that you can use free Wi-Fi at your shopping centres. It could be hotels, on buses or trains. Nowadays, it's more or less everywhere, isn't it? Well, which is a brilliant idea when you think about it. However, when you use a public Wi-Fi hotspots, keep in mind that there's no way to easily find out who controls the hotspot or to prove that it belongs to who you think it does. Now, imagine you enter your local Starbucks, and when you attempt to connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi, that's what you see on your device. How do you differentiate between which of these is real and which of these is fake, especially when they all include the name of the company and the actual title of the Wi-Fi itself being Starbucks? Now, there's some points that you can keep in mind when trying to connect to a Wi-Fi hotspot that isn't genuine. So some of the signs that a Wi-Fi hotspot isn't genuine is, firstly, there's no password required. When using genuine public Wi-Fi, the network will almost ask you for a password, which will you can get by asking an employee of whatever cafe or store you're in. And if the network you choose isn't password protected, then you should still double check with employee that the Wi-Fi indeed doesn't require a password. Now, secondly, non-existent terms of service page. Now, the majority of genuine public networks should direct you to terms of service pages, which you must agree to before you can connect. If the network you choose doesn't take you to a terms of service page, you should definitely think twice before going ahead. Next is slower speed. Most public Wi-Fi nowadays is very fast and up to the same standard as the Wi-Fi that you have at home. Now, if the network you're using is usually slow, it may be a sign that you're being routed. And last but not least, multiple error messages. If the app you're using stops working or your internet browser starts to show multiple error messages, it's a strong sign that the network you're using isn't secure. Now, if you do connect to these hotspots, you need to bear in mind that someone else out there could access what you're working on was connected, even if that means your mobile banking and your private login details that many applications and web services maintain whilst you're logged in. Now, the simplest precaution is not to connect to the internet using unknown hotspots, but instead, we always encourage is to use your mobile data instead. So the 4G and the 5G mobile network that you have available, which is already built in security, or if you can't do that, then please use a virtual private network, which is also known as a VPN. Now, by using a VPN, the traffic between your device and the VPN server is encrypted. Now, this means it's more difficult for a cyber criminal to obtain access to your data on your device. So follow these simple tips to protect your information, especially when you're using public Wi-Fis. Firstly, don't log in to any app or access websites which contains sensitive information, i.e. your banking. Don't leave your Wi-Fi or Bluetooth on if you're not using them, and don't log on to a network that isn't password protected. But instead, do log out of accounts when you're done using them, and do turn off automatic connectivity. However, if you do wish to access a hotspot Wi-Fi, please check the name matches with the place that you're in. For example, if you're in Starbucks or the Marriott, does the Wi-Fi have the correct spelling? And always, 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 if in doubt, and if you're still curious, ask a member of staff. They'll be in a better position to guide you on that. Now, this takes us on to backing up your data. Now, a backup is a copy of the important data that's stored on a separate, safe location, usually on the internet, known as cloud storage, or on removable media, such as your USB stick, it could be your SD cards or external hard drive. Now, once you've made a backup, if you lose access to your original data, you store a copy of it from the backup. Now, as a rule of thumb, you should back up anything that you value. That is, anything that would inconvenience you for whatever reason. So if you can no longer access it, then that's what you have to keep in mind. It's anything that will inconvenience you. Now, that's up to you what you define. For some, it might be picture videos. For others, it might be business contacts or information for customers, for instance. But again, we recommend you have multiple backups for important files stored in different locations. Now, a popular strategy recommended by the NCSC is the 3-2-1 rule. What this is at least 3 copies, 2 devices, and 1 off-site backup. Helps ensure that if one copy is compromised, there's at least one other copy intact. Now, back up your data using cloud storage, which can be securely stored on the internet. Now, most cloud storage solutions provide an amount of storage space for free. Now, this might be sufficient to save all your important files, but ensure you protect your cloud accounts and access to your backups by using, again, strong passwords and turning on 2-factor authentication, as we discussed earlier in this presentation. And secondly, you can back up your data to an external hard drive, a USB, an SD card, or a DVD CDR disc. Always be sure to disconnect removable media when not in use, as criminals may still be able to infect such devices with malware if connected. Now, this takes us on to last but not least is your NCSC top tips. Now, I don't want to sound like a broken record here. However, before we finish up, I'm going to leave you these top tips that you see on your screen in front of you. Now, these top tips will help you stay safer online. Again, a lot of this is everything that we've covered today, which again is the use of a strong and separate password via email. Secondly, create strong passwords using 3 random words. Number 3, save your passwords in your browser. 4, turn on 2-factor authentication. Number 5, update your devices and apps. And again, last but not least, as we just discussed, back up your data. I hope you'll take away these tips and everything that we've talked about today and pass this on to family and friends and implement yourself. And we hope that this will help kind of safeguard you when you're in the online world. And again, thank you so much for taking time out for attending this input today. We honestly can't thank you enough. And if you do have any questions, then please feel free to contact Neighbourhood Watch. We'll be more than happy to forward on any kind of questions or queries that you may have to ourselves. But thank you again, and hopefully we'll get to see you again soon next year for Cyber Scotland Week when it comes around again. Thank you, and good night.